He left us, his wife, his daughter, for her. A broken promise ignited chaos, shattered trust, and tore hearts apart. But even in the darkest betrayal, love's fragile light flickered, leading him back to where he truly belonged. If you this story, then press like button and in comments tell where from you watching. For more daily videos, press subscribe button. Thanks. It happened like the breaking of a quiet dawn, sudden and shattering. One moment, Dad was there, his laughter filling the kitchen, his hand warm around mine, and the next, he was gone. Just gone. The silence he left behind wasn't peaceful, it roared louder than any fight we had ever heard. It was the kind of silence that swallowed rooms whole, where every echo reminded us of absence, and every shadow whispered betrayal. He didn't just leave Mom and me, he left the life we built together crumbling into dust. I remember the morning he vanished. The sunlight streamed through the window, casting soft golden light over our small living room, but it couldn't warm the cold knot twisting in my chest. Mom was humming in the kitchen, preparing breakfast as usual, but her eyes flickered with something I couldn't name then. Fear? Sadness? A silent scream held deep inside. When I asked where Dad was, her voice trembled. He went somewhere. That somewhere would soon become the storm we were helpless to escape. And it wasn't just any somewhere. It was back to her, his ex-girlfriend. The woman whose name we barely whispered, the woman with the flashy club downtown where the music never stopped and the lights never dimmed. A place we had never visited, but one that now haunted our dreams. The betrayal cut deeper than I could understand, slicing through the heart of our family like a jagged blade. How could he leave us for someone from his past? For a life that wasn't ours? The thought twisted inside me like a thorn. Mom tried to be strong, a fortress against the rising tide of pain. She smiled through tears, packed my lunches with gentle hands, and tucked me in at night with quiet prayers. But I saw the cracks, those moments when she stared at the door as if willing him to walk back through it. Her eyes betrayed her strength, shimmering with the sorrow she refused to voice. I wanted to comfort her, but I was barely holding myself together. Why did the man who promised to protect us choose to abandon us instead? Days bled into nights, and weeks stretched endlessly, but Dad didn't come back. Our home transformed into a hollow shell, walls echoing with memories of laughter, now drowned in a silence so vast it felt like drowning. The air was thick with unspoken questions and the heavy scent of loss. I would lie awake, tracing the cracks on the ceiling, wondering if he thought of us, if he regretted the storm he left behind. But the quiet answer was always the same: he was gone. Rumors swirled like autumn leaves in the wind, whispers from neighbors and strangers about Dad and his ex-girlfriend wreaking havoc at that neon-lit club. Stories of fights, destruction, and reckless nights that seemed ripped from a dark fairy tale. It was surreal to imagine the man I knew causing chaos so far away, while we sat here broken and forgotten. Each rumor was a sharp sting, a reminder that the past he had run back to was just as turbulent as the emptiness he left behind. Mom anchored me when the waves threatened to pull me under. She told me softly, "People make mistakes, but that doesn't mean we stop loving them." Those words were a fragile lifeline, though sometimes I wondered how love could survive betrayal. How could I hold on to hope when the man who was supposed to be my hero chose to become a stranger? Still, her quiet strength kept me afloat, even when the nights grew cold and the silence screamed louder than ever. I hated the storm he dragged into our lives, the chaos, the heartbreak, the shattered trust. It wasn't just that he left. It was how he did it, like ripping out the roots of a tree and expecting it to survive. Our family was unraveling, thread by fragile thread. The father I knew was slipping away into a past I didn't understand, leaving behind a hollow man whose promises were nothing but echoes. But the worst was yet to come. Beneath the surface of broken plates and whispered accusations, a deeper pain brewed, a reckoning that would test the limits of our hearts. And when it came, it would challenge everything I thought I knew about love, forgiveness, and what it meant to be a family. That morning, with the golden sunlight mocking our grief, I vowed one thing: no matter how far he ran, no matter how broken we became, I would find a way to hold us together. Even if it meant facing the storm alone. The club was a world apart from the quiet despair we lived in. Neon lights flickered like restless spirits, and the bass shook the walls like the heartbeat of a city that never sleeps. It was supposed to be a place of celebration, of music and laughter, an escape from the ordinary. But for Dad and his ex-girlfriend, it became a stage for a storm far darker than the shadows hiding behind the flashing lights. I never wanted to know what happened that night. Yet, the rumors crept in like smoke, curling around every whispered conversation in our neighborhood. They said voices had risen, sharp, cutting words thrown like daggers. I imagined Dad, his face twisted with anger, standing opposite the woman he once loved and left. The woman whose name tasted bitter on my tongue, the one who had pulled him away from us. She owned the club, an empire of glitter and noise, and he had returned to it, not as a visitor, but as a tempest. I pictured the scene, shattered glass raining down like cruel confetti, bottles smashed against the walls, and tables overturned in a chaotic dance of fury. The destruction was more than physical, it was a mirror of the chaos tearing through their hearts. Her daughter was there too, caught in the middle of a war she never chose. I imagined her watching from a distance, eyes wide with disbelief, heartbreaking not just for the club but for the mother she loved. Loyalty and resentment wove a cruel tapestry inside her, a daughter torn between defending her mother and despising the man who had destroyed their fragile peace. The night wasn't just about anger, it was about loss, regret, and the desperate grip on a past slipping through trembling fingers. The club, once a symbol of success and dreams, now lay broken, just like the relationships tied to it. And we, miles away in our silent home, felt the tremors ripple through our lives, unsettling the fragile ground beneath our feet. Mom and I were left with nothing but fragments, stories pieced together from rumors and hushed phone calls. Each detail was a sting, a reminder that Dad's new world was collapsing even as ours was falling apart. I wondered how someone could destroy what they once cared for so deeply. Was it rage? Desperation? Or the cruel realization that some things, once broken, can never be fixed? The club incident marked a turning point, not just for Dad and his ex, but for all of us tangled in the wreckage. It blurred the lines between enemy and family, love and hate. Her daughter's silent pain echoed ours, a shared wound that no one knew how to heal. That night, under the pulsing lights and shattered glass, the man I once called Dad became a stranger, lost in a storm of his own making. And the daughter of the woman he left stood as a silent witness to a family unraveling, caught in a web of bitterness and broken promises. The worst wasn't just the chaos of that night, it was the calm that followed, heavy and suffocating. A quiet that whispered of battles yet to come, and secrets that would change everything. As I sat in my dimly lit room, the distant echo of that night haunted my thoughts. The storm wasn't over. It was only beginning. She wasn't supposed to be part of our story. The daughter of the woman who stole Dad from us, the one whose name I barely dared to say aloud. Yet, there she was, a living contradiction, caught between the woman who gave her life and the man who had broken ours. Her eyes told a story I couldn't ignore, one of pain, confusion, and a longing for peace that felt so familiar it hurt. I first saw her in the quiet moments, away from the chaos. A girl not so different from me, struggling to hold herself together while the world crumbled around her. The tension between her and her mother was a silent war, filled with unspoken words and shattered dreams. She carried the weight of her mother's mistakes like a shadow she couldn't shake, but beneath it all, I saw a fragile hope flicker. She didn't want to be the enemy. She wanted to understand, to heal the wounds that neither she nor I had caused but both had to endure. Our worlds collided unexpectedly, two daughters abandoned by the same man, bound by a pain neither of us had asked for. She reached out first, a tentative bridge across the chasm that separated our families. We met in a quiet park, the kind where the trees whispered secrets in the wind and the world felt a little softer. Our conversations were hesitant at first, filled with pauses and careful words, but gradually, the walls between us crumbled. She told me about the night she spent watching her mother fight with Dad, the broken promises, and the guilt she carried for loving someone who had hurt so many. I shared my own fears and questions, the loneliness that crept in when the man I trusted vanished. We were two halves of a broken whole, searching for a way to piece ourselves back together. Her dilemma was a mirror of my own. Torn between love and resentment, between loyalty to a mother who had made mistakes and a father who had chosen to leave. She longed for something better, a family whole and unbroken, but the path to that future was tangled with pain and betrayal. Yet, in those moments of shared sorrow, something unexpected bloomed, a fragile friendship, built on understanding and the unspoken promise that maybe, just maybe, we could find healing together. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the sky in shades of orange and purple, we sat in silence. The weight of our pasts hung heavy, but so did the hope of a future where the mistakes of our parents wouldn't define us. The daughter of the woman who once stole my father was no longer just an enemy. She was a kindred spirit, a reminder that even in brokenness, connection could be found. But even as our bond grew, the shadows of the past loomed large. The night silence held a quiet tension, an unspoken question of what would come next, and whether the fragile peace we found could survive the storms ahead. In that fragile light, I realized that healing was not just about forgiving others, it was about forgiving ourselves, and learning to love again, even when the past threatened to tear us apart. Mom never cried in front of me. At least, not after Dad left. I think she believed her tears would break something inside me and maybe even shatter the fragile world we had left. But I saw them anyway. In the early mornings when the house was still cloaked in darkness, her shoulders would tremble beneath the weight of silence. Or in the kitchen when she thought I was asleep, her hands would shake as she prepared my breakfast, gripping the knife a little too tightly. She carried a quiet strength, like a lighthouse standing firm against an unforgiving storm. The house, once filled with Dad's laughter and careless jokes, felt emptier with every passing day. Yet Mom filled the silence not with loud declarations or desperate pleas, but with small, steady acts of love. She was the warmth in my cold mornings, the steady rhythm in a world that seemed to spin out of control. I watched her transform grief into fuel, fierce and unyielding, channeling her pain into keeping me safe, whole. I remember one rainy afternoon when I found her sitting by the window, rain streaking down the glass like tears on her face. She was clutching an old letter from Dad, the paper worn and fragile. Her eyes were distant, reflecting the storm outside. She whispered words I wasn't meant to hear, words full of longing and sorrow. It was the first time I truly saw her vulnerability. Yet even then, there was no surrender, only the quiet resolve to keep moving forward. Mom never blamed me for Dad's leaving, though I often blamed myself. She held me close on the nights when the emptiness felt unbearable, whispering that love doesn't always look like what we expect. She taught me that forgiveness was a gift we give ourselves, not others. And in that lesson, she saved me from drowning in bitterness. Her strength wasn't loud or flashy. It was the soft glow of a candle flickering in the darkest night, a promise that no matter how fierce the storm, we would survive. I began to understand that true strength was not about never breaking, it was about standing up again after every fall. Mom also extended her strength beyond our small family. When I hesitated to reach out to the daughter of the woman who had shattered our world, it was Mom who encouraged me, reminding me that healing sometimes comes from the most unexpected places. She believed that compassion could build bridges where anger built walls. In the quiet moments, I saw how much she sacrificed, not just her happiness, but her peace of mind, to protect us from falling apart. Her love was a fortress, shielding me from the cold winds of despair. And though she rarely spoke of it, I knew she was fighting battles I couldn't see. One evening, as the sky faded into twilight, Mom sat beside me with her hand resting gently on mine. "We may be broken," she said softly, "but we are not defeated. Love is not about perfection, it's about resilience." Those words stayed with me, a lifeline in the darkest hours. Mom's quiet strength was the heartbeat that kept our family alive, even when it felt like everything else was dying. She was the calm in the chaos, the light guiding me through a world turned upside down. And as I held her hand that night, I realized that no matter what storms lay ahead, we would face them together, unbroken, unyielding, and bound by a love that neither time nor betrayal could erase. The phone call came like a fragile thread weaving through the silence, a voice I hadn't heard in what felt like a lifetime. Dad's voice. Hesitant, broken, carrying the weight of months spent wandering through regret and lost chances. The man who had left us behind was reaching out, trembling with an apology I wasn't sure I wanted to hear. He said he wanted to come home. I held the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white, the trembling in my chest louder than his words. How do you welcome back someone who walked away? Someone who chose a past life over the family that loved him? But beneath the anger and confusion, a small, stubborn spark of hope flickered. Maybe people could change. Maybe forgiveness wasn't just a word whispered in the dark, but a path forward. Mom was quiet when I told her. Her eyes were distant, unreadable, as if weighing the possibility of this new chapter against the scars that still bled. Yet, in that moment, I saw a shift, a crack in the armor she had built around her heart. She listened, then nodded slowly, as if saying, "We'll try." Dad's past with his ex-girlfriend was no longer a shadow hanging over us. He had left her behind, abandoned the chaos he had once embraced. This wasn't just a return, it was a choice. The kind of choice that demanded courage and truth. The days that followed were filled with nervous preparation and hesitant conversations. Our home, once silent and cold, buzzed with a fragile energy, hope mingled with fear, and forgiveness wrestled with doubt. Each creak of the door, each step on the porch, became a question waiting to be answered. When Dad finally stood at the doorstep, I didn't recognize the man who looked back at me. Gone was the reckless stranger. In his eyes, I saw something new, remorse, longing, and the fragile promise of change. He didn't rush in with grand gestures or empty apologies. Instead, he waited, patient and silent, as if the weight of his absence had taught him the value of every moment. Mom opened the door, her hands trembling slightly, but her posture steady. The air was thick with memories, both painful and hopeful. We stood there, 3 hearts beating in cautious rhythm, the past and future colliding in a single breath. That night, Dad didn't try to fix everything at once. He simply listened, his silence speaking louder than words. The wounds we carried were deep, but the first step was taken, not in grand declarations, but in quiet presence. The ex-girlfriend's daughter watched from afar, her eyes reflecting a mix of relief and uncertainty. She had seen the chaos of the past and the storms we survived. Now, she witnessed a tentative peace, fragile but real. This turning point wasn't about forgetting the pain or pretending the past never happened. It was about facing it, together. About rebuilding what was broken, brick by fragile brick. As I lay awake that night, the house no longer felt empty. It felt like a beginning, a chance to rewrite the story, with scars as reminders, but hope as our guide. The moment Dad stepped back into our home, the air shifted, a fragile pulse of hope weaving through the spaces where silence had once ruled. It wasn't a triumphant return filled with grand gestures or immediate forgiveness. No, it was something quieter, more fragile, a first step taken on uncertain ground, where love and pain danced in delicate balance. We gathered around the dinner table that night, an ordinary act transformed into something sacred. The flicker of candlelight cast soft shadows on Mom's face, revealing the strength and sorrow etched deep within her. Dad's eyes searched ours, seeking forgiveness in the spaces between words. And I, his daughter, felt the weight of years collapse into a moment of fragile unity. The years apart had left scars, unspoken wounds and memories too sharp to touch. Yet, beneath the surface, something stronger was growing. A renewed bond, forged in the fires of heartbreak and tempered by the quiet power of resilience. The ex-girlfriend's daughter, once a stranger and now an unexpected ally, found her place beside us. Her presence was a reminder that family wasn't just blood or history, it was the willingness to forgive, to rebuild, to love despite the cracks. Outside, the evening sky was painted in hues of pink and gold, a silent witness to our fragile reunion. We shared stories, laughter trembling on the edges, and tears that fell like rain, cleansing, healing, promising new beginnings. Dad didn't erase the past, but he embraced it, showing through actions that his love for us was real and unwavering. He helped with homework, listened without judgment, and stood beside us as we rebuilt the trust he once shattered. Mom's quiet strength remained the foundation upon which we rebuilt. Her forgiveness was not weakness, but an act of bravery, a testament to the power of love to mend even the deepest wounds. The daughters, once divided by pain and betrayal, found friendship in shared experiences and mutual understanding. Their bond was a fragile bridge, spanning the chasm left by a man's mistakes. One evening, As we stood together watching the sunset paint the sky, I realized that family is not perfect. It is flawed, fragile, but resilient. It is a story written in scars and smiles, in heartbreak and healing. Our family's journey was far from over. There would be challenges, moments of doubt, and days when the past whispered too loudly. But we had found something precious: hope. Hope that even broken hearts can mend, that love can find a way back, and that new beginnings are possible, even after the darkest storms. And in that sunset's glow, surrounded by the people who mattered most, I finally understood what home truly meant: belonging, forgiveness, and the courage to love again.